The council chamber was the largest structure Park had ever seen. It floated in orbit around the capital world of the Galactic Council. The chamber was built to hold representatives from thousands of alien species, and today every seat was filled. Stood alone on the speaking platform, surrounded by a sea of alien faces. Some had scales, others had fur or feathers. Some breathed oxygen like humans, while others wore environment suits filled with methane or ammonia. All of them looked at her with the same expression, contempt. Was Earth's ambassador, and she was here to defend her species. She wore her formal diplomatic uniform, dark blue with gold trim. Her hands trembled slightly, but she kept her voice steady as she addressed the council. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she began. Humanity requests the right to remain part of this great civilization. We have been members for 150 years. In that time, we have contributed to science, to culture, and to the common defense. We have earned our place among you. A voice boomed through the chamber, cutting her off. It belonged to Counselor, leader of the Empire. They were an ancient reptilian race that had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years. Was massive, easily 3 times height, with scales that gleamed like polished bronze. You have earned nothing but our fear, hissed. In just 150 years, humanity has spread to 15 colony worlds. You have built a military fleet that rivals species 10 times your age. You push boundaries that have stood for. You are aggressive, unpredictable, and dangerous. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Felt her heart sink, but she pressed on. We have only defended ourselves and explored empty systems. We have broken no laws. We have harmed no one. The High Arbiter spoke next. The being's voice clicked and chirped through a translator. The Council has reviewed your species' history. Your planet has known constant warfare. Your literature glorifies conflict. Your advancement has been built on competition and conquest. These traits are incompatible with peaceful galactic society. Every species here has a history of conflict, argued. Themselves. Silence, roar shook the chamber. We do not question they have proven themselves over. Humanity is young, reckless, and growing too powerful too quickly. The Council has made its decision. We vote now. His breath caught in her throat. This was happening too fast. She hadn't been given a real chance to defend her people. The voting lights began to appear on the massive display above the chamber. Green for allowing humanity to stay, red for exile. The red lights outnumbered the green from the very start. When the final count appeared, felt sick. 847 species voted for exile. Only 3 voted to let humanity remain. High Arbiter read the verdict. By the authority of the Galactic Council, humanity is hereby expelled from galactic civilization. All human colonies beyond the Sol system must be abandoned within 6 months. A quantum barrier will be erected around your home system. Any human vessel found beyond this barrier will be destroyed without warning. This is the will of the Council. The chamber erupted in cheers and clicking and roaring. Stood frozen, unable to believe what had just happened. 300 million humans lived on those colony worlds. Generations of families had built lives there, and now they were being cast out like criminals. Admiral was not a man who showed emotion easily, but as he watched the evacuation of the colony worlds, even he felt the weight of despair. His fleet of transport ships moved between the 15 doomed colonies, loading families and supplies as quickly as possible. The Galactic Council had given them 6 months, but it wasn't enough time. On the planet, a world humanity had terraformed from a barren rock into a garden paradise watched families board the transports. Children cried as they left their homes. Adults carried what few possessions they could fit in their bags. Some colonists refused to leave, insisting this was their home and they would fight to keep it. Had to order his security forces to remove them by force. It broke his heart, but there was no choice. The aliens would kill anyone who remained. The same scene played out across all 15 worlds. 300 million people, uprooted and sent back to an overcrowded Earth they had never known. The fleet worked day and night, but as the 6-month deadline approached, knew they wouldn't save everyone. Some remote settlements were too far away. Some colonists hid rather than evacuate. Did what he could, but in the end, nearly 10,000 humans were left behind when the deadline arrived. As the last transport ship crossed back into Sol's system, stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable. Beside him stood Park, who had returned from her failed diplomatic mission weeks ago. Together, they watched as the alien armada took position around the Sol system. There were thousands of alien warships from dozens of species, all working together to seal humanity away. The largest vessels belonged to the massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything humanity had built. They formed a ring around the outer edge of the system, just past the orbit of Pluto. Then the barrier activated. It started as a shimmer in space, barely visible. Then it grew brighter, a curtain of blue energy that wrapped around the entire solar system. The quantum barrier was a technological marvel, the most advanced piece of engineering the galaxy possessed. It prevented all faster-than-light travel and communication. Nothing could cross it in either direction. Felt the barrier complete itself. They were trapped. All of humanity, locked in their home system with no way out. Earth, Mars, the Moon, the asteroid colonies, the research stations around Jupiter and Saturn. This was their entire universe now. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "we're receiving a final transmission from the Galactic Council." "Put it on screen," ordered. High Arbiter's face appeared. "Humanity, your exile is complete. You will remain within the barrier for as long as the Council deems necessary. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have learned to control your aggressive nature, we may reconsider. Until then, you are alone. Do not attempt to break the barrier. Any such attempt will be considered an act of war." The transmission ended. The alien fleet began to disperse, leaving only a small monitoring force behind. The galaxy was moving on, and humanity was forgotten. Stood beside in the silence that followed. Her eyes were fixed on the barrier, that blue curtain that marked the boundary of humanity's prison. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but filled with something hard and cold. "They made a mistake," she said. Looked at her. "What do you mean?" "They were afraid of how fast we advanced in 150 years, continued. "They were right to be afraid, but they should have destroyed us, not locked us away. Because now they've given us time. Time to grow stronger. Time to advance. And one day, Admiral, we will break through that barrier. And when we do, the galaxy will learn what humanity can truly become." Looked back at the barrier. He thought about the insult they had suffered, the homes they had lost, the humiliation of exile. He thought about his people, trapped but not broken, and slowly he nodded. "Then we have work to do," he said. "If we're going to break free, we need to become stronger than anything the galaxy has ever seen." Smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "They called us dangerous. Let's prove them right." 350 years passed behind the barrier. For the galaxy beyond, life continued as it always had. The Galactic Council governed, species traded and competed, and occasional wars flared up and died down. Humanity was forgotten, just another failed species locked away for their own good. But inside the barrier, everything changed. The first decades were the hardest. Earth was overcrowded with returning colonists. Resources were stretched thin. There was anger, despair, and even riots in some cities. Many people blamed their leaders for the exile. Others blamed the aliens. But slowly, humanity adapted. They had nowhere to go but inward and upward, so that's exactly what they did. Chancellor Menu stood in his office overlooking the terraformed surface of Mars. It was the year 2350, 163 years after the exile. Mars was no longer the red desert it had once been. Now it had blue oceans, green forests, and cities that housed 2 billion people. Venus had been transformed too, its toxic atmosphere converted into breathable air. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn held massive stations and colonies. The Sol system was home to 50 billion humans now, all living and thriving in their prison. But Minyu wasn't satisfied. He had spent his entire life working toward one goal, breaking the barrier and returning to the galaxy. Today, he was meeting with the people who might make that possible. Dr. Lee entered the office first. She was the chief scientist of the Reality Gate project, the most ambitious and secret program in human history. Behind her came Admiral Sora Han, commander of the Ghost Fleet, humanity's new military force. Both of them looked tired but excited. "Show me," Minyu said simply. Activated a holographic display. It showed complex equations and diagrams that would have been impossible for humans to understand just a century ago. But humanity had changed. Genetic modifications had increased human intelligence and most people now lived 300 years or more. Education started earlier and went deeper. The average human of 2350 was smarter than the greatest geniuses of the 21st century. "We've done it," said, her voice trembling with emotion. "The Reality Gate works. We can punch through the quantum barrier." Minyu felt his heart race. "You're certain?" "We've run 10,000 simulations. The theory is solid. We just need to build the actual gate and test it." Admiral Sora spoke up. "And when we do break through, we need to be ready. My fleet is ready. The Ghost Fleet uses quantum phase technology that makes our ships invisible to any sensor system the galaxy has. We can move through normal space and slip into quantum foam, making us untouchable. Each of our ships is more advanced than anything the galaxy has." Minyu looked at both of them. "How long until we can test the gate?" 6 months to build the prototype," said. "Then we send a small scout ship through." "Do it," Minyu ordered. "But keep it secret. Only the highest levels of government can know. If word gets out before we're ready, there will be chaos." 6 months later, Captain sat in the cockpit of the smallest ship ever built for interstellar travel. It was barely larger than a fighter craft, packed with sensors and stealth technology. Behind him, the Reality Gate hummed with power. It looked like a massive ring floating in space near the barrier, covered in strange technology that bent physics in ways that should have been impossible. Was nervous, but excited. He was about to become the first human to leave the Sol system in 350 years, the first to see what the galaxy had become. "Gate is charged," his voice came through his radio. "Captain, you are cleared for transit." "Copy that," replied, "beginning approach." He flew his ship toward the gate. As he passed through it, he felt a strange sensation, like his body was being pulled in every direction at once. Then suddenly, he was through. The barrier was behind him. Stars he hadn't seen since he was born filled his. He was outside. For 3 months, traveled through the galaxy in secret. His ship's stealth systems worked perfectly. He visited dozens of worlds, observed space stations, and recorded everything he saw. What he found shocked him. The galaxy had declined. The Galactic Council was corrupt and inefficient. Wars between member species were common. Smaller species were exploited by larger ones. Pirates operated openly in many sectors. Technology had barely advanced. The galaxy was stuck, stagnant, and decaying. When returned through the gate, he brought data that changed everything. Chancellor Minyu called an emergency session of the Solar Parliament. Representatives from every colony and station gathered to hear the report. "The galaxy is weak," Minyu told them. "They have barely advanced in 350 years. Meanwhile, we have leaped centuries ahead. Our technology, our medicine, our military capabilities, all of it is far beyond anything they possess." "Are you suggesting we invade?" one representative asked. "I'm suggesting we have a choice," Minyu replied. "We can stay here forever, safe but imprisoned, or we can break out and take our place in the galaxy, not as beggars asking for mercy, but as the strongest force the galaxy has ever seen." The debate lasted for weeks. Some argued for peace, for trying diplomacy again. Others wanted revenge for the exile. But in the end, the vote was clear. Humanity would return to the galaxy, but on their own terms. Admiral Saurahan stood in the command center of the Imperial shipyards, watching the fleet take shape. 5,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of engineering. The ships didn't look like the old vessels from before the exile. These were sleek and deadly, covered in quantum armor that could shift between solid matter and energy. They carried weapons that could tear holes in space itself. The Ghost Fleet wasn't just military ships. There were transports for colonists, construction vessels for building stations, and support ships for long campaigns. This was an invasion force, but it was also an empire ready to be born. Chancellor Minu walked beside Sara, looking at the massive fleet. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" he asked quietly. Sara was silent for a moment. Then she said, "They cast us out because they feared we would become too powerful. They were right to fear us, but they were wrong to think that locking us away would stop us. We've become more powerful than they could imagine. The question isn't whether we should return. The question is what kind of empire we want to be." "And what kind do you think we should be?" Minu asked. "Better than they were," Sara replied. "They ruled through fear and exploitation. We should rule through strength and fairness. We should build something worth having." Minu nodded. He had already decided that when humanity returned, they would not recreate the Galactic Council. They would build something new, something better. But first, they had to conquer. The day finally came. The entire fleet gathered near the reality gate. Every human in the solar system watched on their screens as Chancellor Minu gave the order. Humanity had been locked away for 350 years. They had suffered, adapted, and grown stronger. Now, they would show the galaxy what they had become. "All ships," Admiral Sara's voice rang out across the fleet channels. "Prepare for gate transit. We are going home. We are taking back what was stolen from us, and we are going to change the galaxy forever." One by one, the ships passed through the gate. The quantum barrier, which had held humanity prisoner for so long, was finally breached. On the other side, the galaxy waited, unaware that everything was about to change. Chancellor Minu stood on the bridge of the flagship as it passed through the gate. He looked at the stars beyond and remembered Ambassador Park's words from so long ago. She had died 50 years earlier, but her promise lived on. "They will regret casting us out," he whispered. "Today humanity returns, not as refugees, as conquerors." The exile was over. The Empire had come home. Captain Bay watched the countdown on her screen reach 0. Around her, 100 warships of the Imperial Vanguard fleet appeared simultaneously at 15 different locations across the galaxy. These were the former human colony worlds, the planets that humanity had been forced to abandon 350 years ago. Aliens had settled on them, claiming what humans had built. Today, that ended. Ship materialized in orbit around the garden world that had once been humanity's prize colony. The planet still looked beautiful, with its blue oceans and green continents. But now it was home to a species of amphibious aliens who had taken over the abandoned human cities. "All ships, activate broadcast," ordered. Her communications officer nodded and opened a channel to the entire planet. "Attention, residents of," said, her voice calm but firm. "This world was built by humans and stolen from us. We have returned to reclaim what is ours. You have 24 hours to evacuate. Any ship leaving the planet will be allowed to pass safely. Any ship that remains or attempts to fight will be destroyed. This is your only warning." The alien response came quickly. Ships began launching from the surface, most of them fleeing in panic. A few military vessels moved to intercept the human fleet, their weapons charging. Shook her head sadly. "Target their weapon systems only," she ordered. "Disable them, don't destroy them." The human ships didn't even need to fire visible weapons. Quantum disruptors sent invisible pulses that simply shut down the alien vessels' power systems. The alien ships went dark and drifted helplessly in space. Within minutes, The entire defense force was neutralized without a single casualty. The same scene played out at all 15 colony worlds. Humanity's return was swift, overwhelming, and bloodless. Within 24 hours, all 15 worlds were back under human control. The aliens who had settled there were given transportation to other systems. Some went peacefully, others swore revenge, but all of them left. Then Emperor Song made his broadcast to the galaxy. He was the first emperor in human history, chosen by the Solar Parliament to lead humanity's return. He appeared on every communication channel simultaneously, a feat that caused panic in technical centers across the galaxy. The Galactic Council had always controlled interstellar communications. The fact that humans could override it showed how advanced they had become. Was a tall man with sharp features and hair. He wore a simple black uniform with no decorations except a small pin showing Earth and her colonies. When he spoke, his voice was carried to trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. "People of the galaxy," he began, "I am Emperor Song of the Human Stellar Empire. 350 years ago, your Galactic Council cast us out. They called us dangerous and locked us away behind a quantum barrier. They were right to call us dangerous. Today, we have proven that by breaking through their prison and reclaiming our worlds. We do not return as beggars. We do not return as victims. We return as an empire, stronger than any force this galaxy has known. We have technology you cannot match. We have weapons you cannot stop. We have the will to reshape this galaxy into something better than what you have allowed it to become. For 350 years you have lived under the corrupt rule of the Galactic Council. They exploit the weak. They enrich the powerful. They prevent progress and maintain stagnation. This ends now. We offer you a choice. Join us in building a new order based on fairness and merit, or stand aside and let us do it without you. But if you choose to fight us, know that you will lose." The broadcast ended. The galaxy erupted in chaos. Panic spread through the Galactic Council. Emergency sessions were called. Counselor, now ancient but still leading demanded immediate military response. "How did they break the barrier?" roared at the Council's scientists. "How can they broadcast on our channels? What else can they do?" Nobody had answers. The quantum barrier had been impossible to break according to all known science. The fact that humans had done it meant their technology had advanced beyond the galaxy's understanding. Grand Admiral Nam received the Council's declaration of war with grim satisfaction. He stood in the command center of the flagship Eternal Victory, surrounded by holographic displays showing the entire galaxy. The Galactic Council was assembling its largest armada in history. 10,000 warships from 200 different species, all converging on to defend the capital. "They're bringing their entire fleet," his second-in-command reported. 10,000 ships against our 500. "Numbers don't matter anymore," replied calmly. "They could bring 100,000 ships and it wouldn't change the outcome. Prepare the fleet for battle. Today, we show them how badly they miscalculated." The battle lasted 6 hours. The alien armada arrived first, forming a massive defensive sphere around the capital world. Counselor personally commanded the dreadnought, the largest ship in the fleet. They waited for the human attack, confident that sheer numbers would overcome any technological advantage. Then the human fleet appeared. Only 500 ships, but they moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They phased in and out of normal space, appearing and disappearing at will. Alien sensors couldn't track them. Alien weapons couldn't hit them. The human ships moved through the alien formation like ghosts, untouchable and unstoppable. Gave the order: activate quantum disruptors, target all enemy vessels. A wave of invisible energy swept across space. 10,000 alien warships suddenly lost power. Their engines died. Their weapons went offline. Their life support systems flickered but stayed on. The entire alien armada was disabled in seconds, without a single shot being fired. The alien crews sat in their dead ships, helpless and confused. They had expected a battle. Instead, they had been rendered useless without any chance to fight back. Opened a channel to the entire alien fleet. This is Grand Admiral Nam of the Human Stellar Empire. Your ships are disabled but intact. Your crews are unharmed. You can restore power in approximately 1 hour after our fleet has departed. Return to your home systems and tell your leaders what you saw here today. Tell them that fighting humanity is pointless. Tell them to accept our terms or suffer worse. The human fleet departed, leaving 10,000 disabled ships floating in space. When power returned an hour later, the alien crews fled in every direction, spreading the story of their humiliating defeat. Director Shin didn't believe in dramatic battles. She believed in information. As the head of Imperial Intelligence, she had spent the past year infiltrating every major government in the galaxy. Her agents were everywhere, gathering secrets, finding weaknesses, and building networks. What she discovered was worse than expected. The exile wasn't random, she reported to Emperor. I have proof. They manipulated the entire council. They knew humanity would eventually rival them for power, so they orchestrated our expulsion to eliminate the competition. Studied the documents she had provided. Communications between leaders, bribes paid to council members, threats made to species who considered voting for humanity. It was all there, proof of a conspiracy that had stolen humanity's place in the galaxy. Release this to every species in the galaxy, ordered. Let them see what their council really is. Let them see who they've been serving. Within days, the documents spread everywhere. Species that had been loyal to the council began to question their allegiance. 26 species immediately declared they would join humanity's new federation. These were mostly smaller species that had been exploited by the council for centuries. They saw humanity as liberators, not conquerors. But they and their closest allies refused to accept defeat. They formed the Coalition of Free Worlds, gathering 150 species who swore to stop human expansion. The galaxy was now divided between those who supported humanity and those who opposed them. Emperor addressed his people from the throne room on, which had become the temporary capital of the human stellar empire. Around him stood his advisors and military commanders. Before him, billions of humans watched on their screens. We have returned to the galaxy, he said. We have proven our strength, but now comes the harder part. We must build an empire that is worthy of our ideals. We must show the galaxy that we are not just conquerors, but leaders who can create something better than what came before. The Coalition of Free Worlds stands against us. They outnumber us greatly, but we have something they do not have: unity of purpose and superior technology. We will defeat them not through genocide or slavery, but through demonstrating that our way is better. Every species that joins us will be treated as equals. Every world that accepts our protection will be free to govern itself. We will build an empire based not on fear, but on mutual benefit. The war is not over. It has only begun. But I promise you this: when it ends, the galaxy will be forever changed, and humanity will never again be cast aside or forgotten. The throne room erupted in cheers. Across human space, people celebrated. They had suffered exile for 350 years. Now, finally, they were taking their revenge and their rightful place among the stars. Admiral looked at the tactical displays showing coalition fleet movements. The real war was about to begin, but he felt no fear. Humanity had come too far and sacrificed too much to fail now. The war lasted 5 years and touched every corner of the galaxy. It was not a war of conquest, though many saw it that way. It was a war between an old, corrupt order and a new force that refused to accept that order. The Coalition of Free Worlds fought desperately to maintain the status. The human stellar empire fought to tear it down. General stood on the bridge of a transport ship, looking down at the planet III. It was a mining world where the Coalition used slave labor from 3 different species. Its mission was simple: free the slaves and secure the planet, but simple didn't mean easy. Ground forces ready, he asked his second-in-command. All battalions are prepared for deployment, sir. The enemy has fortified positions around the slave camps. They're using the slaves as shields. Felt anger rise in his chest. This was typical coalition behavior. They would sacrifice anyone to maintain their power. Change of plans. We don't land near the camps. We land at the administrative center. Cut off the commanders and the guards will surrender. The assault went exactly as planned. Human soldiers, enhanced with genetic modifications and equipped with powered armor, struck the administrative building with precision. The coalition commanders were captured before they could give orders to harm the slaves. Within 3 hours, the planet was secured. The freed slaves wept when human soldiers cut their chains. But not every battle was so clean. The siege of Draconis Prime lasted 18 months. Grand Admiral Nam surrounded the planet with his fleet, cutting off all trade and supply lines. He could have destroyed the planet easily, but that wasn't the goal. Humanity didn't want to be remembered as genocidal conquerors. "We could end this in a day," one of his officers said as the siege entered its second month. "Our weapons could crack their planetary shields." "And kill billions of civilians," replied. "No, we wait. We let them feel the pressure. Eventually, their own people will demand surrender." He was right. After 18 months, the population rose up against their own government. They were starving while their leaders lived in luxury. When riots broke out in the capital city, the Planetary Defense Force refused to fire on their own people. The government collapsed from within. Accepted the planet's surrender personally. He stood in the ruined council chamber where the leaders had once ruled, looking at the defeated officials before him. Counselor was not among them. The old had died 6 months into the siege, finally succumbing to age. "Your empire is broken," told the officials, "but your people do not need to suffer. Surrender completely, join the new federation we are building, and you will be treated fairly. Resist, and you will lose everything." The chose surrender. Without their leadership, the coalition began to crumble. But the war took its toll on humanity too. Admiral Park learned that lesson in the worst way possible. She was the daughter of the late Ambassador Park, and she had inherited her mother's determination. She commanded a fleet of 30 ships in the Battle of the Outer Reaches, fighting to liberate a sector where 5 species were held in virtual slavery. The battle went wrong from the start. The coalition had learned from their defeats and developed new tactics. They couldn't match human technology, but they could use overwhelming numbers and desperate tactics. A coalition ship rams flagship, breaking through its shields through sheer kinetic force. The ship was torn in half. Barely made it to an escape pod. She watched her ship die, along with 300 crew members. It was the worst single loss the human fleet had suffered. When rescue ships found her floating in space 3 days later, she was physically fine but emotionally shattered. "We're supposed to be invincible," she told Grand Admiral during her debriefing. "That's what everyone says, but we're not. We can die just like anyone else." Looked at the younger officer with sympathy. "We never said we were invincible. We said we were superior. But superiority doesn't mean immunity. It means we lose less often than they do. Your crew died as heroes, Admiral. Their sacrifice freed 5 species from slavery. That matters." Returned to duty a month later, commanding a new flagship. She never forgot the lesson. Power had a price, and someone always had to pay it. Meanwhile, Diplomat worked to minimize that price. She traveled constantly, meeting with species who were considering which side to join. She didn't threaten or bully. Instead, she showed them what human technology could offer: medicine that extended, energy systems that ended scarcity, food synthesis that eliminated hunger. "Join us," she told a gathering of neutral species leaders. "Not because we force you, but because we offer you something better. The coalition keeps you weak so they can control you. We want to make you strong so you can stand as equals. The choice is yours. Three major species defected from the coalition after visits. They saw that humanity wasn't interested in replacing one empire with another. They were building something genuinely new. But not everyone in humanity agreed with this approach. Prince Regent, son of Emperor, had been raised during the war. He had grown up hearing stories of the exile and the suffering it caused. He believed humanity should rule with a firmer hand. "We're being too soft," he argued with his father in the private chambers of the imperial palace. "These species need to learn that opposing us has consequences. We should be making examples, not offering partnerships." Emperor looked at his son with tired eyes. The 5 years of war had aged him, adding to his hair and lines to his face. And what would that accomplish? Fear is a poor foundation for an empire. It breeds resentment and rebellion. Our strength gives us the power to be generous. We should use it. "Generous?" challenged. "They exiled us. They would have been happy if we died in isolation. Why should we be generous to them?" "Because," said quietly, "we are trying to be better than they were. If we rule through fear and cruelty, we become what we fought against. Is that what you want? To build an empire that future generations will despise?" The argument continued for hours, but neither father nor son could fully convince the other. It was a debate that echoed across human space. Some believed in strength through dominance. Others believed in strength through cooperation. The war had not yet decided which philosophy would win. In the year 2542, the turning point came. Three major species that had been loyal to the coalition, the hive mind, the energy beings, and the Thane warrior clans, all announced they were abandoning the coalition and joining humanity's federation. They had seen enough battles to know the outcome was inevitable. More importantly, they had seen human-occupied worlds where former enemies were treated fairly and given genuine autonomy. Grand Admiral immediately offered peace terms to the remaining coalition forces. The terms were simple: surrender, join the Federation, and accept the new order, or fight on and face total defeat. Most of the coalition collapsed, species their forces, and declared neutrality. Only the most stubborn holdouts remained loyal to the old order. Chief among them was the remnant of the military, led by fanatics who refused to accept their empire's fall. The final battle came at a place called the Dragon's Grave, a massive nebula that had been a military stronghold for thousands of years. The last fleet gathered there, 800 ships crewed by warriors who had decided to die rather than surrender. Brought the full force of the human fleet, 8,000 ships, the largest armada humanity had ever assembled. He gave the one last chance to surrender. They responded by opening fire. The battle was brutal. They fought with desperate fury, using suicide tactics and weapons that damaged their own ships just to hurt the enemy. Human casualties were higher than in any previous battle. 40 ships were destroyed. Thousands of humans died. But the outcome was never in doubt. When the last ship was disabled, ordered all firing to cease. He had the surviving crews taken prisoner and treated well. Many expected him to execute them. Instead, he had them transported to a neutral world and released. "Why?" one of his officers asked. "They would have killed us all if they could." "Because this war is over," replied. "What comes next is building peace. That starts with showing mercy when we have the power to show cruelty." The Battle of the Dragon's Grave marked the end of organized resistance. The coalition of free worlds ceased to exist. The Galactic Council dissolved in chaos, its members fleeing or surrendering. After 5 years of war, humanity had won. Emperor addressed the galaxy one final time from his throne on. He looked older than his years, burdened by the weight of millions of deaths. But his voice was steady. "The war is over," he announced. "The old order is gone. Now we must build something new. In the coming years, we will create a true federation where all species are equal under law. There will be no favored races, no exploited worlds. We will share our technology freely. We will protect the weak. We will earn the peace we have won through force. To those who fought against us, you are not our enemies anymore. Join us and help build this new galaxy. To those who stood with us, your loyalty will be rewarded with partnership, not subjugation. Together, we will create something worthy of the sacrifices made to achieve it. Across human space, people celebrated victory. But in the quiet moments, many wondered, now that the war was over, could they truly build the paradise they had promised? Or would power corrupt them as it had corrupted the council they had destroyed? 5 years after the war ended, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Where once the Galactic Council had ruled through bureaucracy and corruption, now the Galactic Federation governed through elected representatives and transparent law. But the transformation had not been easy, and many questioned whether it was truly better. Chancellor stood before the Federation Parliament, looking at the assembled representatives from over 500 species. She had been elected Chancellor 3 years ago, after serving as humanity's chief diplomat during the Reconstruction. The Parliament building was on, the same world that had once housed the corrupt council, but this was a different kind of government. We face a crisis of confidence, told the Parliament. Many species still doubt our intentions. They believe humanity will eventually reveal itself as just another empire, ruling through strength rather than consent. We must prove them wrong through our actions. A representative from the hive mind spoke up, its voice buzzing through a translator. How can we trust that humans will not abuse their power? You control the most advanced military in the galaxy. You could dominate us all if you chose. Met the alien's eyes calmly. You're right, we could, but we won't. And I'll tell you why, because we remember what it felt like to be powerless. We remember the exile. We remember being cast out by those stronger than us. We swore we would never become what they were. That promise is the foundation of everything we've built. The debate continued for hours, as it did every day in the new Parliament. Unlike the old council, where decisions were made in secret by the powerful, the Federation debated everything openly. It was messy, frustrating, and slow, but it was also fair. Admiral had changed since the war. The young prince who once argued for ruling through strength had become a military commander who understood the cost of violence. He now led peacekeeping forces across the galaxy, trying to maintain order in the chaotic post-war period. Not everyone had accepted the new order. Remnant forces still fought guerrilla wars in dozens of systems. Some were coalition loyalists who refused to accept defeat. Others were criminals taking advantage of the chaos. And some were simply species who didn't trust humanity and wanted to remain independent. Sat in his command center on a patrol carrier, reviewing reports from across his sector. A colony world was under attack by pirates. A mining station refused to recognize Federation authority, and a group of former council officials was attempting to restart their old government in a remote system. Sir, we have authority to use force in all 3 situations, his tactical officer reported. Shook his head. Force should be our last option, not our first. Send negotiators to the mining station. They have legitimate grievances about mining quotas. Offer humanitarian aid to the colony under attack and give the pirates a chance to surrender before we engage. As for the old council officials, let's see what they actually plan to do before we act. His officers looked surprised. The old would have sent warships immediately, but he had learned from his father's teachings and from his own experience. Military power was necessary, but it wasn't sufficient. You couldn't shoot your way to peace. Empress Regent Song prepared for her coronation. Her father, Emperor, had announced his retirement 6 months ago. At 90 years old, even with human life extension technology, he was tired. He had led humanity through the return, the war, and the reconstruction. Now it was time for a new generation to take over. Stood in her private chambers, looking at the ceremonial robes she would wear for the coronation. They were beautiful but heavy, just like the responsibility she was about to accept. Her younger brother had been offered the throne first, but he had declined. He preferred military service to politics, so the burden fell too. Her father entered the room. Looked old now, his hair completely white, his face lined with wrinkles, but his eyes were still sharp. "Are you ready?" he asked his daughter. "No," admitted. "How could anyone be ready for this? The galaxy is still recovering from the war. Billions of people depend on decisions we make. One mistake could undo everything we've built." Smiled. "Then you're wiser than I was at your age. I was so certain I knew what needed to be done. I never questioned whether I might be wrong. That certainty cost lives." "Do you regret it?" asked. "The war, the empire, all of it." Was quiet for a long moment. "I regret the deaths, every single one, but I don't regret fighting to change a corrupt system. The council needed to fall. The question is whether what we built is truly better or if we just replaced one empire with another." "And what's your answer?" "I don't know yet," said honestly. "That's for history to decide, and for you to shape. The empire is becoming a true federation, but that transition isn't complete. You'll need to reduce humanity's power gradually, give more authority to the parliament, and make sure no single species can dominate again. It won't be easy." "Nothing worthwhile ever is," replied. Ambassador II walked through the memorial garden on Earth. He was the grandson of the admiral who had overseen humanity's exile 363 years ago. Like many humans now, he had been genetically enhanced and could expect to live for 300 years. But even with that extended, the exile felt like ancient history. The garden was dedicated to all who had died in the wars, both human and alien. Each name was inscribed on crystal pillars that stretched for miles. Walked slowly, reading names. Humans who had died defending the empire. Aliens who had died fighting against it. All of them remembered here together. Emperor found him there, as they had arranged. The two men walked together in silence for a while, surrounded by the names of the dead. "Do you think we did the right thing?" asked quietly. Considered the question carefully. He was a diplomat trained to see multiple perspectives. "I think we did what we thought was right. Whether it actually was right, we won't know for generations." "That's not a very satisfying answer." "Truth rarely is," replied. He pulled out a data pad and showed a series of messages. "These are from species we liberated, former slaves who now live free, worlds that were starving and now have plenty, species that were dying and now have access to our medical technology. They think we did the right thing." "And the others?" Showed him another set of messages. "These are from species who lost family in the war, from colonies that were destroyed in the fighting, from people who had good lives under the old system and resent the changes we forced on them. They think we're monsters." Read through both sets of messages. "So we saved some and hurt others. Does the good balance the evil?" "I'm not qualified to make that judgment," admitted. "But I can tell you this. The galaxy is changing. Technology that was hoarded by the powerful is now available to everyone. Laws that protected the strong and exploited the weak have been replaced with laws that apply equally to all. The Federation isn't perfect, but it's better than what came before." "Better," repeated. "I suppose that's all we can hope for. Not perfection, just improvement." The coronation of Empress Song was attended by representatives from over 5,000 species. It was the largest gathering in galactic history. Humans made up only a small percentage of the attendees. That was deliberate. The message was clear. This was not a human empire, but a galactic federation. Stood before the assembled crowd, wearing the ceremonial robes that had been modified to incorporate symbolic elements from dozens of different cultures. When she spoke, her words were translated into 5,000 languages simultaneously. 12 years ago, humanity returned from exile," she began. "We came back angry, powerful, and determined to change the galaxy. We succeeded, but the cost was terrible. Millions died in the wars. Entire civilizations were disrupted. The pain we caused in pursuit of justice cannot be forgotten or excused. Today, I accept the throne not as an emperor who rules, but as a symbol who serves. My father built an empire. My generation will transform it into a true federation. Over the next decade, we will transfer more power to the Galactic Parliament. We will reduce humanity's military dominance by sharing our technology with all member species. We will ensure that no single race can dominate as the once did, or as we currently do. Humanity was exiled for being too aggressive, too dangerous, too powerful. Perhaps we are all those things, but we are also capable of great compassion, great innovation, and great courage. We offer this to all species. Stand with us, not beneath us. Together, we will reach heights the old council never imagined. The age of empire is ending. The age of federation has begun, and the galaxy will never forget that it was humanity, dangerous and exiled humanity, that made it possible. The crowd erupted in applause. Not everyone agreed with his vision. Some humans thought she was giving away too much power. Some aliens thought humanity still controlled too much. But most recognized that this was genuine progress toward something better. 10 years later, former Emperor Song died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 100. His funeral was attended by billions across the galaxy. Representatives from every member species came to pay their respects, not to a conqueror, but to a leader who had changed everything. At the funeral, Empress spoke of her father's legacy. He was not a perfect man. He made mistakes. He started a war that cost millions of lives, but he also broke a corrupt system that had oppressed trillions. He gave the galaxy a chance to become something better than it was. Whether we live up to that chance is now our responsibility. Ambassador II attended the funeral and watched the ceremonies with mixed feelings. He thought about his great-grandfather, Admiral, who had overseen the original exile. He thought about Ambassador Park, who had sworn humanity would return. He thought about all the people who had died to make that return possible. After the funeral, he returned to the memorial garden and added one more name to the crystal pillars. Song, first emperor, died age 100. Beside it, he added a simple inscription. He changed the galaxy. History will decide if he made it better. Years passed. The Galactic Federation grew stronger. More species joined voluntarily. Technology continued to advance, now shared freely rather than hoarded. Wars still happened, but they were smaller and less frequent. Slavery was eliminated across all member worlds. Poverty decreased dramatically as resources were distributed more fairly. Humanity's military advantage gradually disappeared as other species gained access to the same technology. Some humans worried about this, fearing that humanity would become vulnerable again. But Empress and her successors held firm to their promise. Strength through partnership, not domination. 100 years after humanity's return, historians gathered to assess the empire's legacy. They debated endlessly about whether the violence had been justified, whether the changes had been worth the cost, whether humanity had truly built something better or just replaced one empire with another. But in the end, they agreed on one thing: the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The old system of exploitation and stagnation was gone. In its place was something imperfect but genuinely better. A federation where species worked together rather than competed. A civilization that valued progress and fairness over tradition and power. Humanity had been banished from the galaxy, cast out and forgotten. They had returned as an empire, powerful and feared. But what they left behind was something greater than an empire. They left a legacy of hope that change was possible, that the powerful could choose justice over domination, and that even a dangerous, aggressive species could become liberators rather than conquerors. The galaxy would never forget the lesson. Exile humanity and they will come back stronger. Give them time and they will change everything.